In this video, I'm going to talk about the newly IPO'd WeBuyCars and whether you should consider investing in the company.
WeBuyCars means we buy cars. Anyone for a car, see?
We all know Transaction Capital, who recently unbundled WeBuyCars, and the main reason was to unlock value for its shareholders and to kind of get away from all the problems that Transaction Capital has faced. The price of Transaction Capital in the last year alone has lost around 80% of its value. So the question everyone is asking is, should you invest in WeBuyCars? So we're going to look at what WeBuyCars has to offer, and at the end I'm going to share whether this is a company that I'm considering to invest my money in and whether it's something that you should consider as well. So like we know, the company IPO'd and a lot of people considered buying the company, or a lot of people already bought the company, and you need to be cautious when buying a IPO because historically the hype is so much that people push up the price of a newly listed company that it skyrockets in the first few weeks, and then eventually the price needs to come back down. So the first thing we're going to look at is the balance sheet of WeBuyCars, and this is basically how we determine the financial health of the company. And I have to say, it is quite impressive to see how the company grew from the year 2021 up until now. So the first thing I want to show you is the property, plant and equipment. This means it's like land, buildings, offices, or anything the company acquires to run its daily business. So we can see from the year 2021, it grew its property, plant and equipment from 619 million rand to a massive 1.13 billion rand in just 2 years. So that's almost doubled. So we can see that its cash and cash equivalents grew from 37 million to a massive 164 million in just a couple years. That is quite impressive growth, and we can see, of course, its total assets grew from 1.8 billion to 4.2 billion rand. Something that is worth considering is that it has quite a bit of short-term borrowings, which is around 437 million rand. Compared to the previous year, it almost halved its short-term borrowings from 807 million rand to 437 million rand. So one of the ratios that I used and wrote down here is known as the current ratio, and this is a basic liquidity ratio that you need to use to make sure that the company is in a good financial position. So if we divide the current assets with its current liabilities, it gives us a current ratio of 3.3, which is more than satisfactory. Something else that we need to consider is its cash ratio. So using a cash ratio helps you to determine whether a company has enough cash to pay for its current liabilities. So current liabilities is any debt that needs to be paid within 12 months. So if a company doesn't have a good cash ratio, and let's say they have an issue with their business or their operating business, where will they get the cash to pay for their short-term debt? So WeBuyCars has a cash ratio of 0.2, and I would like to see it closer to 0.5. These are just some of the basic ratios that we can use to determine whether the company is in a stable financial position. And like we can see, the company has a pretty decent balance sheet. The next thing that we can have a look at is the income statement of the company, and this is where it gets quite interesting. We can see that they grew their revenue from 2021 from 5 billion rand to a massive 20 billion rand. That is significant growth. Something that I noticed is that their net operating expenses is massive. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is not as great, and I'll show you in just a minute. If we scroll down and we look at the total comprehensive income for the year or the year ended, which is basically net income, we can see that in 2021, from revenue of 5.5 billion rand, they made net income of 297 million rand, which is a net income margin of 5.26%. That is not the best net margin in my opinion. And the thing that I don't like to see is, although it made 20 billion rand in in the last financial year, it only had a net margin of 4.27%. So the net margin is actually going down, which is quite troubling to see. So this is again something that we'll have to continue to monitor going forward. Then we get to the statement of cash flow, which is my favorite statement. The cash the company generates from its operating activities, meaning the cash it generates from its core business, was R1 billion in 2023, and it more than doubled from 2021. So this is significant growth of 156%, which is insane in just a couple of years. So this again is something that I would like to monitor to see whether the company can keep growing with this type of numbers, because then it might be an interesting company to invest in. Something that I noticed is the increase in its inventories. If we look at the year 2022, we see that they bought 762 million rand worth of stock, which is basically cars, but in the last year they only bought 205 million rand. This might be an indication that they are sitting with more stock at the moment that they can sell because of the economic pressures that we face. We can actually see that the inventories of the companies, which falls part of its current assets, increased with around 179 million rand. Obviously, WeBuyCars, they can't buy stock and immediately sell it. It might only be sold after 6 or 12 or even 18 months. Then if we scroll back to the cash flow statement, if we look at the net cash generated from its operating activities, we can see that they generated 582 million rand compared to a 149 million rand loss in the previous year. So that's an increase of 377%, which is quite impressive. Something else that I wanted to share is its free cash flow to debt ratio, which is basically the free cash flow that you get divided by all of your debt. This just means how much of the free cash flow that the company generates can be used to pay off its debt if they ever had to. This is obviously not something a company will do, but it's a good way to look at the financial health of a company. Before we get to that, I need to scroll down and work out the free cash flow that the company has at the moment. So free cash flow, again, simply it's net cash generated by its operating activities, and then you deduct your purchase of property, plant and equipment, which gives a 510 million rand of free cash flow, which is quite a lot of free cash flow. But if we work out the free cash flow margin, which is your cash flow divided by your total revenue, we can see that WeBuyCars only has a 2.8% free cash flow margin. So for every 100 rand it generates, it only gets to generate R2.80 free cash flow. This is not necessarily the best margin, and this is not the type of companies that I like to buy. But if we look at 2021, we can see that they were cash flow negative with 79 million. So it's obviously good to see that the company is generating free cash flow now. Once we scroll back to work out the free cash flow to debt ratio, we divide our free cash flow with the total debt, which gives us 0.26. At the end of the day, I really am impressed with what WeBuyCars are doing, and they really do have a solid balance sheet, a decent income statement, but they need to improve their free cash flow in my opinion. I'm always careful to invest in newly listed companies because it's more hype than anything else, and if we have a look at the price of WeBuyCars at the moment, we can see that it's already going down. So I would rather wait it out and wait for more earnings from the company before I would consider investing in WeBuyCars. Let me know, are you investing in WeBuyCars? What do you think about the company? Like I said, I really like the company. I'm super impressed by what they are doing, but I'm just not sold to invest in them just yet. If you haven't checked out Broke Stock before, make sure to follow my link in the description to sign up with the platform. It's a great way to invest in different type of companies in ETFs while learning about investing at the same time. So make sure to sign up using my link because I get a small incentive and it really helps out the channel. Again, if you like the video, share it with a friend or family member, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.